Man, I'm having so much fun. This is a $1.6 trillion industry. I'm talking about the food and beverage space. If you're not having fun, you're in the wrong place. Yes, it's hard work, but my gosh, the companies, the brands, the flavors, the experiences, the missions, it's fantastic. But some of the brands are different, better, and special. They're the ones who are able to really compete and vie for customer loyalty. Look, I know you want to make your brand different, better, and special. I know you yourself want to be different, better, and special. That's my mission. That's why you're here. Join me on this journey as I interview CEOs and founders from all the different companies within the food and beverage industry so we can discover what they're doing, so we can take that information back, digest it, and become better ourselves, and to help our companies take on different strategies, pick the right technology, pick the right partners, and of course, you got to have great tasting food. You got to have great tasting beverages. Packaged goods. If it doesn't taste good, you're lost. I'm sorry. You're going to lose millions. If you're new here, take the 5-episode challenge. Go back, pick out some brands, some CEOs, some topics. If you love the content, subscribe. You're going to find it on every podcast platform once or twice a week. But I also publish them on LinkedIn, because that's where we kind of hang out. So when you see it on LinkedIn, stop by, make a comment, share it back into your food and beverage network. I would appreciate it. The brands would appreciate it. To all my loyal listeners, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Thank you for being with me on this journey. Thanks for coming along on this mission for the past 2 years. If you are considering a strategic job change, message me. Let's have a confidential conversation. If your brand is growing and you need to attract experts, you also need to contact me because I have created a different, better, and special recruiting system. I promise you, no other search firm in America is doing that. Who am I? I'm Tony Moore. I'm an expert food and beverage headhunter, semi-professional podcaster, and I'm here each and every week. Stay tuned for this week's episode. All right, here we are on Winning at Work. As you know, this is a $1.6 trillion industry, but how could it be that size if we didn't have plant-based food manufacturers and co-packers, the infrastructure for so many of these great companies that we're coming to know and love? And that's going to be one of our topics today. I am really excited to introduce to everyone Lauren McNamara. Lauren, welcome in.
Thanks so much for having me, Tony.
Well, I'm surprised you even have time to come in and talk to us. When people find out what it is you do for SunOpta, they're probably going to imagine you out on the floor actually having this podcast while you're managing.
Every so often I have to step away from the oat milk and talk to other people. So
yeah, exactly. You know, all work and no play, as they say. Well, I want to give people kind of an overview of kind of where you're coming from, your area of expertise. You did graduate from the University of Virginia, the Darden School of Business, where you got your MBA, and you got your chops in General Mills. And kind of fast forwarding a little bit, now we are Vice President, Assistant General Manager for plant-based food and beverage for SunOpta.
Yes, I am. And it's a very exciting time to be a part of a business that has a hand in furthering the plant-based food and beverage movement.
Well, and I think you guys are my first publicly traded company. Typically, I have more the smaller kind of emerging type brands, but I have known about you guys. I've seen you guys quite a bit on LinkedIn, and I was kind of reading through your profile, and I thought you just really are the perfect person to have come in. And just, we're going to get into SunOpta and exactly what you guys do, but you've been growing and building this plant-based operation out, and it's enormous. And I really just can't wait to kind of pick your brains. I found a really interesting write-up on you guys, and I wanted to read that. It's SunOpta manufactures natural, organic, and specialty products sold through retail and food service channels. SunOpta operates as a manufacturer for leading natural and private labels, and also proudly produces its own brands, including SOWN, Dream, Westlife, and Sunrise Growers. So we have so much to cover, but tell us a little bit about why you think that SunOpta really stands out from the crowd, different, better, and special from other food manufacturers.
Well, I think we have a very unique business model. There's not a lot of other food manufacturers that partner with others as widely across the industry as we do. As you just read, we sell products to the food service channel. We do private label, partnering with retailers. We co-pack for leading brands. We sell ingredients to other manufacturers. We have our own brands. And we're in a bunch of different categories as well. And we're really good at the very specific things that we do. And typically you would see a business that's only focused on brands or only focused on private label. And we love, and I think it's really to our advantage and our customers' advantages that we cover so many different areas of the market and we go to market in so many different ways.
Yeah, and you need an expertise for each of those areas. And you guys are in, as you said, ingredients, you do co-packing, private label, food service. Some companies are just happy to be successful in one of those. And your role, I thought, was particularly interesting because not only are you, operational and responsible for, expanding plants and kind of knowing where the trends are and helping the company be prepared to take advantage of those future trends, but you're also responsible for new business development. So I thought that was an interesting pairing. So are you like a left brain, right brain person? How did this even happen?
Yeah, I love that marketing in SunOpta it overlaps very much with general management. And I think of it as how do I bring things to market? And that requires thinking about a lot of different things. It requires thinking about, well, what customers do I want to work with? Where am I going to sell this to? How am I going to get this on shelf? Do I have enough capacity to make this? What ingredients are available? What things do consumers want to eat? So for me, it's just this perfect combination of all of these different things that I love thinking about. I love solving puzzles. And to me, a lot of these things are just different puzzle pieces that you have to fit together to kind of create a successful business.
Well, in our pre-podcast call, and that maybe pulls the covers back a little bit for people, we don't just come into this thing totally cold. We both have day jobs. There's no way we could do this if we didn't know where we were going. So I already know that you've done a lot of work and research to understand consumer preferences, and you've seen trends, and you've helped your company, you've helped your clients get into, profitable plant-based categories. So looking ahead, can you tell me what other trends that you're starting to see? Are there consumer preferences as you kind of look ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the plant-based milk space, which is where we primarily play, we are seeing oat milk just continue to take off. And prior to the last probably 2-ish years, the plant-based milk category was big and growing, but almond milk was really king. And almond milk is still king, but we're seeing tremendous growth from oat milk. And we were in a position a few years ago to see this happening. And I think that's a benefit of us playing in so many different spaces. We, hear things from ingredient vendors, from customers. We see trends on shelf. We're monitoring what consumers are doing. And, we saw this oat milk thing starting to become interesting. And when you think about it, a lot of the dairy alternatives that were out there before oat milk, they had very specific benefits, but also some drawbacks. For example, if you have a nut allergy, almond milk or cashew milk is not going to be for you. If you have a soy allergy, soy milk is not going to be for you. Coconut has, I think, a very enjoyable flavor, but some people really don't prefer that specific flavor. So there's different pieces of each one that are, I think, based, personal preference or dietary restrictions would be, you would be able to pick the right choice. But oat milk, it tastes great. There's no allergens. It's North American grown. It's a very sustainable option when you compare it to dairy and even some other plant-based options. And oats are a product and a food that people are very familiar with. They, have been eating it for breakfast and in snacks and in other things for years and really perceive it to be very healthy for you. And so people feel very good about drinking oat milk. And so you can see that it has a lot of benefits, and there's a lot of reasons why it was very poised to take off. And we were able to invest in that very early on and position ourselves and as a leader in oat milk, and also, as you said, help our customers get into and grow their oat milk businesses.
So many of these plant-based food companies, they have a mission. They have a purpose beyond just, feeding people and being profitable. How important has it been for companies in that space to align with a partner like you? Are there certain conversations that come up, like just making sure values are aligned, or is, when you're bringing on a new customer, is it just kind of, black and white, this is what we're capable of handling for you? Or does any of the mission kind of come into play when a manufacturer's trying to, find a partner?
Absolutely. And that's something that we talk a lot about with our customers. And increasingly, I think when they are vetting us as a partner, they want to understand, how are we sourcing? Where are we sourcing from? What are our sustainability goals? How are we making progress on them? And then always kind of continuing to discuss, are there more sustainable options that we could be using? And one of the things that I think aligns really well is that primarily our beverage production is shelf stable packaging, which we in the industry refer to as aseptic. So when we produce these plant-based milks, they go into a package that doesn't have to be refrigerated in a warehouse. It doesn't have to ride in a refrigerated truck. It doesn't have to be refrigerated at the store. So you're kind of saving energy and doing a more sustainable supply chain just in that. But also the shelf life is a lot longer. So the shelf life for these is a year versus things that are produced in a refrigerated setting that can be, a couple months. And so there's a lot less food waste in our method of manufacturing as well. And the packaging that we're using is fiber-based versus plastic. And so there's a lot of interest in that. And it's becoming increasingly more recyclable across the United States. And so I think there's a lot of interest that just our business model lends itself to sustainability and those types of values that our customers and all sorts of manufacturers are seeking.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it from that angle, but when you have an aseptic product that, has that long shelf life and it doesn't have to be refrigerated, you're able to reach a broader market. I mean, you can reach into other countries, other places where, it could be very challenging to get like a traditional dairy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you do have to refrigerate it after opening. I should say that. But until you open it, it can sit on a shelf. We've seen that these types of products are used a lot when there are weather events and there's no electricity or things like that. Like you can stock up on your pantry, in your basement, whatever, and have these things available for use when you need them without having to worry, are they going to go bad? Are they going to expire? Am I going to waste this food? And so I think that's also why it's a really great option for food service too, because a lot of times there's not as much refrigerated space, but there's a lot of pantry space. So when you need to use that type of product, you just throw one in the fridge and you're ready to go, versus having to store, a dozen packages in the fridge at a time.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And we all hate plastic. So, I mean, the fact that you're into fiber, that's fantastic. So I want you to kind of walk us through your particular expertise of growing specifically a food manufacturing business. And this, I really want to tailor this for that small, that mid-sized food manufacturer that they're trying to grow, they're trying to scale. You've been there, you've done that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, what are some, practical ways that a food manufacturer can or should be thinking about growing their business?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, there's been a couple things that have been really key. And one of them is finding something you're really great at and honing in on that thing, and not spreading yourself too thin by doing a bunch of different things. And for us, we've been making soy milk for decades. Like, we've always been in plant-based milks before it was cool. So we've known how to, take plants, different seeds, nuts, legumes, grains, and extract the liquid and turn them into plant-based milks. And so for us, that was a really important competency when we were looking how to grow and really focusing on, okay, we're really good at plant-based milks. In fact, we're one of the original plant-based milk manufacturers, not just only packaging, but taking the raw ingredient and transforming it into a beneficial liquid. And how do we expand that capability, beyond soy, and looking ahead into the next thing? And we've experimented with a lot of different things. We've, looked at other seeds like sunflower seeds, and we've looked at other legumes like chickpeas, and there's just countless numbers of different plants that have all sorts of different benefits. But what's really important is to make sure you know how to take those things and turn them into something that consumers will value and then get really, really good at that thing.
And by the way, I noticed where your R&D team is up for an award.
They are up for an award. They're the best R&D team in the entire business. I am so proud of them. And so they are up for best R&D team or R&D team of the year. It's an award from Food Processing Magazine. And they've our R&D team wears so many hats, not only developing, the food and beverage products that we sell, but they help our plants run better. They help our customers develop things and problem solve. They work with our quality teams to make sure, what they kind of created in the lab is coming out right at the plants. And they work incredibly hard. And so they're very deserving of this recognition.
Well, it only seemed natural that we give them a little shout out, because we're talking about something that you do really well. And without your R&D team, how could you, expand your line? I call it a line extension. Mm-hmm. I like the way you put it. You really know what you do exceptionally well, and then you just find other applications for it. And that would be your foundational point of how to grow a business.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, our company has recognized how important it is to have a strong R&D team and invest in that capability. And so we actually just moved to a new office. And the impetus behind that was to have a much more sophisticated R&D space. So now we sit in a space that, it's shared space with a pilot plant and a brand new R&D innovation lab, so that we can get even better and give our R&D team the right tools to make sure that they're continuing to, be experts in this field and stay on top of what's going on across all of our categories, but also bring customers in so that we can work very collaboratively with them in this new space. So it's been really great to see, our investment and prioritization of the R&D teams and the work that they do.
Well, I know I got you off track. I'm like a golden retriever. I see a ball, I see a squirrel, and then I'm off. So I want to get you back on mission. Okay. So your first point is well taken. So what else would you recommend?
The other thing I was thinking about with this question is finding the right partners to grow with. I think it's really hard to grow, to just do it all yourself. And so one of the things is we've been fortunate to work with some of the greatest companies in the industry, both big and small. And to your earlier question about, how do you make sure you're compatible with your customers? Do you ever talk about values and how you work together? And I think that's a really important thing. And we work with some of the largest players in the industry, and we try to be a very strategic partner to everyone we work with, not just a transactional partner. You know, a transactional partner is you put in your order, we make the cases, you pick them up. A strategic partner is how do we look long-term together and make joint investments, joint commitments, and go down these paths together, because in those situations, you both win, you both grow. And so that's, I think, really key is instead of a if you build it, they will come model, it's how do we build it together and both grow and win at the same time.
So sorry, Field of Dreams lovers. It's not always if you build it, they will come. All right. You have to have joint investments from both sides. Are you prepared to just give us a quick example of what that means practically in terms of joint investments?
I can. I mean, one of the things that we've been doing over the last few years is really building out our manufacturing capabilities. And so we have, I've got 4 manufacturing plants in my business, and we're building a 5th down in Texas. And so we'll actually have a diamond of manufacturing, if you will. So West Coast, East Coast, North, Midwest, and then Texas. And so it's something that we offer to our customers is the ability to produce more locally to the regions where you want to distribute and produce the same item in multiple plants. So you're not trucking things all over the country. It's more sustainable. It saves everybody money in logistics and trucks. And so, but before we went and built that new plant, you know, we had to work with our customers and say, okay, we're going to go build some more capacity. You know, is this something that you would be interested in? And let's make sure that we're building the types of packaging, the lines, the capabilities that you're going to use. And so we, you know, talk to different customers to try to understand how their businesses are going to grow, and then make sure that we're aligning our capabilities to their growth as well. And then we kind of commit and go in together.
Well, I guess when I heard you say joint investment, I was thinking that they were literally, you know, putting money into. When I hear the word investment, I just think money.
Yeah, and for the most part, we like to own our own manufacturing assets because we have spent a lot of time and effort developing kind of proprietary processes and ways of manufacturing, and so. And we have a lot of different customers, so it's really hard to have customers own a piece of that. But in terms of investment, you know, it's hard for us to make those investments without commitments from our customers. And so
I understand what you mean. You're just talking about business,
longer term business commitments.
Okay, I understand. More just understanding that you are making the investment and that there's an expectation, we'll just leave it at that they're going to continue to expand their business with you. So that's how they invest, is by putting their future business into you. So that makes sense.
Right. And we wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't kind of have a track record of success with these customers and of helping build businesses together and just really strong relationships. And that's, I think, you know, it's the earlier point about find the right partners. I think it's so critical. Another one is I do think that sometimes it takes a lot of time to scale. And so the idea of kind of, I'm going to do this thing and my business will instantly hockey stick. I'm in Minnesota, so I have to make a hockey reference. Is not.
You just lost half the audience. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Is not the reality. It takes us a really long time. Like when we were developing oat milk, it took months and months and months to develop our proprietary process, and then it took investment and lead times and getting things up and running, and then it took time to get the right kind of customer base on board and get the business going. And it takes time. And so you have to go in with the expectation that there's going to be different phases of building and growing and scaling. And it's not instant. And so setting your own expectations and those that are going on the journey with you is really important.
In your case, you want stakeholders to understand and have the right kind of expectations. If you're a small company and you're getting investment from banks or from other, angel investors, they need to understand it takes time to scale. So your advice is you need to let people know it's not going to happen overnight.
It's not going to happen overnight, but also it's always good to have a plan. This is what it's going to look like, just so you can bring people along on the journey. And especially in today's...
The pro forma or whatever it is that
exactly
you're working with. Yeah.
And especially in today's environment where, the supply chain is just, things are taking longer. There's sort of scarcity of certain materials and things like that. I think it's especially true.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. How difficult is it now when you are planning to go into some kind of a line extension and you're having to look out into the future and estimate, will this supply chain remain stable? Can I even open up this line of business? Because if you invest all your time and money and then you have a major disruption for 6 months, you've essentially lost everything.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And that's exactly the types of things that we're dealing with today that we have never had to deal with before, or just not to this extent. You definitely have to look out much further on ingredients, make sure to secure those ingredients. Lead times are a lot longer, so there's a lot more planning on, okay, if we're going to produce this date, when do we need to order things? When do we need to lock things in? Much more kind of pre-planning, especially for any inputs that are based on an agricultural cycle. So, for example, oats are a crop. There's a certain planting time, harvest time, same with soybeans. And so for those things where typically we just go, year to year, you're buying them, there's not an issue. Now we're partnering a lot more further out with farmers, with processors, to make sure that we have supply when we need it.
Yeah, it just sounds like working in ag would be so difficult right now with that and fertilization costs, input energy costs. Yeah, it's very challenging because your end product is for the consumer and they can only absorb so much in terms of price.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we saw last year is the growing conditions, the drought really affected the oat crop. And so there was a lot fewer oats in the market than typically. And that scarcity, especially as oats are peaking in popularity in a lot of areas, was driving up prices. And so we do hope that with more water, hopefully this year, more acres planted, that we will see a turnaround in that supply. But there's a lot of other dynamics in agriculture too. And so we try to keep on top of all of that and just figure out all the different puts and takes as we're planning for our business. And that's another reason why we're really proud to be producing plant-based milks, is just when you compare to dairy milk, those resources that are used, land use and water use and emissions are much lower. And so we, make a little bit of a choice, drink a little more oat milk or soy milk or rice milk versus dairy milk. And, it feels like you're helping just a little bit. And if everybody does a little bit, it helps a lot.
It seems like most homes now kind of split their milk between, dairy and some kind of an alternate. I know we do. It's just very common now.
Yeah, we do too. We have in our fridge dairy milk, and we use soy milk for smoothies because of the higher protein content. And we use oat milk for coffee because it just is so creamy and delicious. And I think that's, as we've done different consumer studies, that seems to be very, very common, that consumers are buying different milks for either different usages or different members of their family who prefer things or just have different dietary needs. And I also think that we're seeing a lot of really interesting flavors and options come out of the non-dairy milk. So we're seeing more kind of seasonal flavors, different blends. And so there's a lot for consumers to really be interested in and try.
Well, I know you're not a food scientist, but what seems to be the challenge of making an alternate milk taste, what you're used to with cereal?
Well, it depends what your base is. And that is one of the trends we're seeing is similar to the plant-based meat side, where before a few years ago, you were seeing kind of these veggie burgers that were the shape of a burger, but didn't really taste like it. And now you're seeing the Impossibles and the Beyonds really try to mimic not just the shape, but the taste and the look and the feel and the mouthfeel of meat. You're seeing that more with dairy as well. So it'll be interesting to see what consumers gravitate towards. You're seeing a lot of companies try to find exact kind of matches for dairy milk, but using plant-based ingredients. And so there's a lot of more blends coming out of lots of different things, not just a pure almond base or an oat base, but different things that bring different parts of that dairy experience into the product. One of the hardest things is that dairy comes with certain structure. It has certain proteins and certain other things that allow it to act like it does just naturally. Plants don't naturally have those things. So, for example, when you pour dairy milk into coffee, it just blends sort of seamlessly and stands up to coffee. But usually in plant-based milk, they don't have the same protein structure, and coffee's acidic and very hot. And so it's kind of a harsh environment. And so if you don't formulate something the right way, it's going to curdle, it's going to break down, and it won't be dangerous, but it might not taste as good and it might not look as appealing. And so that's what the challenge is for R&D teams all over the industry, is to try to match that experience using plant-based ingredients to match that very specific and very functional structure of dairy.
Well, I'm going to have to try oat milk in my coffee. I think that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that one. So,
well, if you are, I should promote our own brand. Sown is an organic oat coffee creamer, and it is absolutely delicious. And so it's in 4 flavors right now. But we like to think that a particular expertise is plant-based milks and coffee, because it's a very common usage occasion. And so definitely give that one a try. You can order it on Amazon or get it at
samples. Samples. I didn't. So I love
understood.
Coffee. I'm going to have to try that. And other than Amazon, are they in other grocery retail nationally, or is it more specialty?
Yeah, they're in every Whole Foods, I believe. And then Sprouts, if you live in an area where you have Sprouts, and we're always adding new stores all the time. So keep checking. But I think those are probably the surest bets right now.
I heard someone say this, and I love the way they frame this. They're like, well, if I could go back and do this business over again, this is what I would have done different. Now, I know you didn't start this business, but if you could go back 2, 3, 4 years, knowing what you know now, and you want to grow this manufacturing business, is there anything you'd do different?
I would have invested in oat milk a lot sooner, no question. I think we've been managing to keep up with it, but I wish we could be adding more capacity much more quickly, because every time we add capacity, it gets utilized right away just because of the growth. And then it takes another 12 to 18 months to add more. And so I think we've done probably better than most job of keeping up with the demand and trying to look ahead and get ourselves up and running with more capacity. But, there could have, if I went back in time, there could have been more. But that's a really hard thing. It's easy to say looking backwards, that would have been a successful thing to do, but it's a really hard thing to say and do at the time.
No, I know. But sometimes though, I'll get an interesting answer though, because, who knows what you could have said, and it might have led to, a different decision that someone else could make. But then again, if we've got some startup companies out there that are looking at, potentials, you've just pretty much told them oat milk is where we need more volume. And I don't know that you prepared this information, so you may not have it, but do you know roughly the kind of the market size for oat and kind of what some of the projections might be for it off cuff?
I mean, it's still growing at triple digits. The hard thing about figuring out the market size is there's so many channels that are not tracked. So we don't really have great tracking for what's going on in food service. And that's been actually where oat milk kind of got its start in coffee shops. And so that part is really hard to track, and it's just exploded in that industry. So I would say, that's probably a huge portion of where it's sold and where it's consumed, as well as just retail, people purchasing it online, that sort of thing. But it's certainly in the several hundred millions and continuing to grow really fast.
Well, I've had recently a few more female executives on, and to no fault, there don't seem to be as many. And I'm glad that, we've had this time, and I'm curious, do you have any advice that you'd like to offer up? Maybe someone's given you a great piece of advice. You'd like to share it, just kind of.
In general, I would say I'm a big fan of listening to your gut. Business, personal, career decisions, all of those things. I also I make lists and I look at things very analytically, but ultimately I think that, you kind of know what's best for you. I think you know a lot more than you do about, or than you think you do sometimes, about your business, about the right way to go, about different decisions that should be made. And I think we should all do a much better job of kind of listening to our gut and our kind of, internal, know-how to give us direction.
That is good advice. And there are people who have very strong feelings, and you should not stuff them. You should not ignore them. We like to say, if you have a strong feeling when you're trying to make a decision, that is sometimes just a big sign. Could be from the universe, wherever. You need to stop and pay attention and get to the bottom of it and figure out what direction is that trying to take you. And who knows, maybe you go back 3 years, you have that feeling, oat milk. And you,
I usually think that once you start to see something pop up in a lot of different places that are not connected. And that's how I felt oat milk was popping up in all these different things. And it started to congeal for me that this was a thing that was going to be big.
I agree with you. That's really one good way to kind of suss out what is happening when you see similar data points from completely non-connected areas. That's when it's kind of okay, I need to pay attention to this.
Right. Something's going on. Yes.
Well, before we go, were there any other thoughts you wanted to add to our initial topic of, growing? I know I took you off track. I think we had 3 or 4. Were there any others that you wanted to make sure you get in?
I mean, I think those are the key ones. And in addition, I would just say, I just love the team that I work with here. And so I think it's really important to surround yourself with good people who collaborate well, who are, smart and talented, and that you like working with every single day. Because that's made my job here just so enjoyable, is working with an amazing team that really gels and works well together.
And, backhandedly, you just said you work with an experienced headhunter. That's what I heard.
Is that what you heard? Yeah.
That's what I heard very clearly. No, you bring up a great point. Trying to manage strategically and operationally and from an execution standpoint, you just can't do it. You have to have a solid team. Every executive that comes on, they talk about, even for growing brands, sometimes you need to hire a little earlier than you think you should, and absolutely hire the very best person you can find and get people in their right spots. It's a very complicated business. So, well, Lauren, thank you so much. I think we definitely got some good ideas about how to grow a manufacturing business, and really just I think the continued growth that we're going to see in alt dairy is it's going to be there.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm really excited to see how this part of the industry grows and changes over the next few years, and we'll be there working to help grow it.
Now, if someone wants to connect with you guys and kind of tap into some of these capabilities for either, white labeling or co-packing, what's the best way for them to connect with you guys?
Yeah, they can go right to our website, sunopta.com. And at the top, there's some navigation that helps look at all the different things that we do. When you kind of click into them, there's ways to get in touch with us.
It's a very good website. There's a lot there. I mean, I would encourage people to go to it. There's a lot of data. It's very well organized. And yeah, you guys are definitely in like 3-4 different categories. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
Lauren, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to talk to us here on the Winning at Work podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun to chat with you.